Hello guys and welcome back to Unique Arts. I'm Costco Picasso and today I just got another monthly update for you. So if you're aware, I'm trying to be more properly booktubish. I mentioned that in my channel goals for the year, and so I'm started this monthly update well, uh, I started it just like a month ago essentially. And so this was the second episode of Shenanigans as I called it, but the goal I set for myself really this year, I didn't mention it I mentioned it in my channel goals for this year. Uh, Not too many people watch that, but so I'll reiterate it here. It was pretty much I want to read about 35 books this year. So that's about 3 books a month. And that's not great, but I also barely read at all last year. That was easily the worst year ever for how much I read. I definitely beat that in February. I read about 7, you could say, and I'll go over what I read here pretty quickly. I also didn't do go over any of the writing stuff. Something I'm trying to do more this year as well. And last month I did write a short story. I didn't mention it in that video, so I'll mention it here. Uh, it's really short, like about 3,000 words, and I'm gonna be trying to write more. This month in February, though, I wrote the first act of a play, and planning on it being in 4 acts. We'll see how it goes. So I know I have the general outline done and everything. It's just a matter of sitting down and writing it. I'm just worried that I don't know how to write a play. I've never done this before. But regardless, it's going okay. It's been trying to put more focus into my writing and reading. It's been pretty difficult in some regards. Honestly, I can happily say I've never really been depressed in my life until this, and there's just some extenuating circumstances that are kind of out of my control that are not helping me whatsoever. But it's something that I am pretty confident will go away when that goes away, which is hopefully here soon. So hopefully things are looking better next month, to be completely honest. But regardless, today we will. I just mentioned briefly, I guess, what I've written, and we'll see if those come to anything. I guess just a little bit about channel before I even talk about the books I've read this month is in the past 2 months, so January and February, this is when I started actually making videos pretty consistently. My subscriber count has doubled, which isn't saying too much when I only had 60 subscribers and now I have 120. Actually like 121 as of this moment of recording, but still that's pretty awesome. I mean, I'm pretty excited to see the channel growing in that regard. A lot of it has been the art history lecture series, and then a couple of other videos that have gotten more views than I generally get. But regardless, I don't want this channel to be just for art people where people come to do art history homework or whatever, but I do enjoy those, and so I will continue making them. But I'm also gonna, of course, be doing my more booktubish stuff with book reviews and whatnot. So to go over what I read this month, I'll hit you with the 3 that I don't have physical copies for. So I mentioned it in my last month's video, but I finished Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. My wife has a physical copy of it somewhere. I did audiobook. I don't know where her physical copy is, though. I have no idea where it ran off to or where our kids ran off to, like where our kids ran off with it. Regardless, I finished The Fellowship of the Ring, and I also read The Two Towers. They were fantastic. I mean, as expected, I am very acquainted with the story, even if having never read it before. This is my first time reading it, which I feel almost a little ashamed that it took me so long. I'm 26. I'm almost 20. I'm getting towards 27, and I only finally read Lord of the Rings. And I'm in the middle, I guess, of the Return of the King, which I will be finishing up in March. So it's been great. I think most of you people who are watching this video are acquainted with Lord of the Rings and know that it's fantastic. It's perfect fantasy, in my opinion, mostly because it's fantastic. You know that it's not necessarily real, but it almost feels like it could be real. There's a lot of fantasy that is so far-fetched, or the plot armor is just so thick. It's just like impossible. Like it's there, it's like entertaining, cool, but like this is feels so real that it's like it's believable that it's some sort of myth, because and I guess that's in some regards what it is, right? If it's a form of mythology, that's what mythology often is. It feels real but it doesn't at the same time. Like it's not real, you know it's not real, but it feels like almost like it could be real. And mythology is largely based in a lot of truth in many regards, historical truths, and in some regards Lord of the Rings is too. And I think it's very basic human truths, uh, like challenging times. You know, you gotta do difficult things, and there are characters that are, in many regards, not extraordinary, but they are. And it's so relatable because of that. It actually feels achievable. I can't be like Kaladin because I don't have this wicked, fancy magic wind running crap, but I can be like Aragorn, or I can be like Frodo or Sam, you know. And even the elves, you feel like you could be like them to a degree, right? So perhaps that's why Lord of the Rings feels so good. And I think that's what fantasy authors should go for, in my opinion. It's not to be Lord of the Rings, but to be like Lord of the Rings in that way. I don't know if that makes sense. I might be just preaching to the choir here. I'm sure I am. But regardless, I read those two books, first two books for Lord of the Rings, and then I also read Witchy Eye. And I just had a review come out for that. It was a great book, actually. Let me put it simply. So I've never read any books by DJ Butler before, and this is part of me trying to read more for fun this year. I'm reading Lord of the Rings, kind of kick that off, but I also wanted to read Witchy Eye, mostly because I met Dave at LTUE. Oh, I guess that's something else I did this month. I went and saw Liam, my brother from Liam's Lyceum, present his first academic conference. I've done about 5 academic conferences. Only one in person though, actually. The rest were all virtual because it was all like during the COVID stuff. And it's been about a year since I've done one because academia has let me down drastically. But regardless, that was a fun experience. I definitely plan on going next year and experiencing it more fully because I barely really went. I really just went to see Liam and realized, oh, this is something I might enjoy. But I met Dave. He was friendly. I read Witchy Eye. Liam told me that it was free ebook download from the Bain Books website, and it was. And that's what I read it as ebook. I don't like reading ebooks. Maybe if I had a little Kindle or whatever, I would like it, but I don't. I just read it off my phone. And although it's not my preferred format, it was good. It was a great book, actually. I really enjoyed it. And then it's kind of like that historical epic fantasy or whatever. I've never read anything like that before. But it was interesting. In some regards, I guess you could say some of the pros about it are similar to Lord of the Rings in the sense that uh, it's recognizable. Like, I knew a lot of the characters, I knew the names, the place names, even if some things have been distorted and whatnot. I knew the story in some regards. But at the same time I didn't because it was fiction, you know, like it's been altered pretty drastically, and it was still had that sense of familiarity to it that helps, I guess, draw you in a bit. And I don't know if that's stuff I would ever necessarily want to write myself. I'm not sure, but I still enjoyed it. I actually did really enjoy it. So, and I highly recommend that anyone read Witchy Eye if you haven't. And I plan on getting to the rest of the books at some point. I'm not exactly sure. I don't have any money currently, although I do have some audiobook credits, so there's a good chance I'll get to Witchy Winter, which is the next book. There are 4 currently out for the Witchy War Saga, and I know he has 2 that are supposed to be coming out, I think, relatively soon. I'm not exactly sure. Either way, I have only read the first one, so I'm not really highly anticipating those being released yet because I'm not ready to read them. But regardless, really good. Dave was really nice, and I highly recommend that. Okay. And then, on a similar note, someone else I met at LTUE, or whatever the hell you call it, was Cheryl Olson. And she has written one book, and it came out about 2 years ago. I actually have a review for this that should be coming out. It's called The World Maker's Assistant. And this is what I think you call middle grade fantasy. I don't really know, if I'm being completely honest. But it's really quick read. I could see it being for, like, a junior high audience, maybe. Really wacky and quirky, almost in some regards to the point of absurdity. Like it seemed like this could be something made into an animated movie or TV series, like cartoons. Like they were just really odd in many regards. But it was still enjoyable, and I enjoyed it, I guess, to put it simply. And so I have a review where I'll talk about it for a few minutes. But Cheryl was really nice. I met her that first day, that first evening I showed up to go meet my brother, and she was on a panel with my brother and Dave. Dave invited them both, like, along with a couple other guys, to be on it, and so I watched that. And I bought this on Amazon for like $6. So I mean, yeah, worth a read if you're interested in stuff like that. It's really quick. It's only like 240 pages. So, but I don't know if I don't know if I'm gonna like ever necessarily. I don't think I will ever plan on reading any other more books like this. I read it because she was nice, and it was still a good book. It's just not really my type, you know, not really my thing. Okay, and then I guess I counted it in my because that makes number four. Number five, I'm counting Civil Disobedience. It's only about 20 pages, and it's in the back half of this, which has Walden in it as well, both by Henry David Thoreau, who I recommend reading. Civil Disobedience is more like an essay. It's only about 20 pages, and it's really good though, and worth the read. If you know anything about me and about the family I was raised in, I've been raised to think a lot like Mark Twain. I love my country, and I pretty much love my government when they deserve it, which is hardly ever. So there's that. And this guy was writing in the 1800s in Massachusetts, and even the government was being a bunch of, you know, not nice people during that time. He got arrested for not paying a poll tax, which was like $9 or whatever. And he said it was like it's a greater evil to pay, you know, for an unjust like literally support an unjust law, and by extension the unjust government that installed it, than it is to spend the night in jail for it. You know, like, which one hurts more? It hurts more to uphold evil essentially than it does to, you know, just suffer the consequences of evil people, which is kind of how I feel right now with my other circumstances. But regardless, yeah, see, this is what he says in here. Under a government which imprisons any unjustly, the true place for a just man is also a prison. So fair enough. I think it's got a lot of, it's a juicy read. It's only about 20 pages, but real juicy. So I mean, we'll consider it counting. That would make number five. And one I counted for, like, I actually read a couple, and I'm only just gonna count it towards one. It's actually in a book, and I haven't finished the whole book. But I have this collection of great Irish plays. I did a video on the Bow Stratagem, which is by George Farquhar at the beginning of this, and I read that not in February, but I read a couple more plays, so I'm just going to count the couple of plays as one, because plays are pretty quick. I mean, that essay is pretty quick, but regardless, I read them from the same book, and I haven't finished the whole book, but I read School for Scandal, which I've actually read before. It's a good play by Sheridan. And then I read the Colleen Bond, which I had never read before, and I actually really liked it. I think I might do a video on it. We'll see, because I would like to perhaps take snippets from a performance for the Colleen Bond, because I've actually found a couple of short performances for it on YouTube. Well, the Bow Stratagem, I didn't do that because I couldn't freaking find anything, so that one's just like really short, and I just give you the overarching idea of the whole play. But yeah, so I have not read this completely. I still have the Oscar Wilde ones to go, which I've already read before, so I don't know if I'm going to reread them or not. Same with the George Bernard Shaw, but there's Lady Gregory and William Butler Yeats. I say Yeats all the time. William Butler Yeats, who I love his poetry, and he's a big proponent to the Celtic revival in Ireland. I love Yeats. I've never read any of his plays, and there's like 2 of them in here, so I might get to that. Regardless, it's been an interesting book. I guess I'm about halfway. I don't know. But we'll count that for one. Maybe I'll finish that in February. It's not really high on my list right now. And then the other one I finished, and I had started it a while ago, was Aesthetics. So I mentioned this, it's one of the books I mentioned in my 34 books that should actually change your life. It was fresh on my mind, so otherwise might not have been on that list, but it's still a great book. I feel like aesthetics is a part of philosophy that is often ignored. People like Plato weren't really a fan of aesthetics, and by extension, lots of other philosophers don't talk very heavily about it. And if they do, it's definitely in tight relation to metaphysics or even ethics and epistemology, which is fair, I think, as well. He does a pretty good job about talking about it explicitly. Now, there are some things, of course, a different understanding of epistemology, metaphysics, what like that, which are kind of beyond me in many regards. That would help, and he's written a lot on a lot of different parts of philosophy, but this one is pretty good. I think to just you could tackle it without necessarily being a philosopher, and I'm not even really a philosopher. I'm technically a graduate student philosophy, so perhaps I have more understanding of philosophy than your average person, but I've no, I don't even know if that's accurate. But regardless, I really enjoyed it. It was really good, and he's very much coming from a creationist, like a theistic point of view, because he is a Catholic himself. I am not Catholic, but I find I agree with a lot of Catholic thought, and I appreciate a lot of Catholic thought, especially since they've been around for a while to think about things, and so I really appreciate it. And yeah, Dietrich von Hildebrand. There's actually a second volume that I have on my bookshelf right over there, and I will read it definitely at some point. It's not as refined, like he didn't really edit it as much before he passed away, I guess, supposedly. And regardless, I think he talks more explicitly about stuff like literature and actual like paintings in that volume. So I definitely want to read it. I don't know exactly when I'll get to it, like if I'll get to it in March or not, but regardless, I will be reading it. I started a couple of other books that I haven't really finished. I mean, if you count the stuff I'm reading with my kids, I know Liam mentions this stuff too, is I'm still like in the middle of Winnie the Pooh and Peter Rabbit, and Winnie the Pooh is much more digestible. I mean, they're both about the same age. I mean, Peter Rabbit's what, maybe 20 years older than Winnie the Pooh, but Winnie the Pooh is much more digestible for a contemporary audience. I guess it was just a way in the language it was written with, but regardless, I really like Winnie the Pooh. Peter Rabbit's okay. My kids prefer Winnie the Pooh as well. I think because of that, they can tell like it doesn't hold their interest as much. The Peter Rabbit stories don't, but it's mostly they're both just like collections pretty much of stories. Like I guess you can call them different chapters in Winnie the Pooh, but for the Peter Rabbit, they're literally just different collections with different characters, and four different characters really, and not as interesting. But I've been reading those. I've actually read them both before to my kids when they were really little, so they don't remember, so it's not my first time. It's actually I'm finding Peter Rabbit to be much more enjoyable the second time around. The first time I was like, "What the hell is this?" But regardless, I've reread a little bit of I don't know how to say his name. Aeschylus. I don't know. I'm not good with names. I've reread of his Prometheus Bound because that's kind of my play I'm reading. My play is in some regards based off Prometheus Bound. So there's that. And then I've begun Being in Nothingness by Sartre. And I don't know if I'm going to finish it anytime soon. It's a pretty hefty and difficult book. It's like 800 pages or whatever. And not an easy read. It's philosophy. I think I'm going to reread his essay, Existentialism is a Humanism, pretty soon and perhaps do a video on it because I would like to refresh my mind on that. It's been a little while since I read it. But regardless. And then another story that I have started reading, I actually mentioned it in that same video, the 34 books that should actually change your life, that I have not yet actually finished, so I'm not counting for this month, is Kon-Tiki by Thor Heyerdahl. This is pretty quick, so I'm a little surprised that I just haven't sat down and finished it, really. This is a pretty quick read. It's only like 230 pages. But regardless, this is also pretty good. I'm enjoying it. So I'd say it's been a good month. I've been successful. I've read about double of what I need to for monthly goals. Now, there might be some months where I don't read as much. We'll see. I haven't, I don't know exactly what I'll finish this Kon-Tiki for March, but I don't know exactly what else I'll be reading and stuff. So we'll see. Regardless, I am happy to be reading. I think I've been not in the best state of mind, and the reading has helped keep me a bit more grounded. I think especially it's something that I've grown up doing a lot of, and so it's kind of nice to just have that to rely on, especially since I kind of wasn't good about it for the last while. But regardless, let me know if you have read any of his books. I think the first three that I mentioned are probably the most popular. Uh, I already know the story of Kon-Tiki. There is a movie out about this too. I highly recommend you watch it. It's great. I've watched it a couple times actually, so I pretty much already know the gist of what's happening in this as well. But regardless, I figured I should read it for myself. It's written by Thor Heyerdahl, the adventurer and anthropologist or whatever you call him himself, the Norwegian man. But the such a great name, Thor Heyerdahl. Great, and all the same with his buddies like that. Bjorn, Thorsten, Herman's not so great, and then there's the, for all the buddies that are on the expedition with him. Trying, and I'm blanking on the other guys because there's 6 of them in total that go on the raft. But regardless, let me know let me know your thoughts, I guess. If you for some reason stuck around this long to watch the video, finish the video, and I appreciate it. I do. Please feel free to like and subscribe if you aren't as well. And I will see you guys next month with another update, and hopefully I read more than Kon-Tiki. So, see ya.